Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. The movie I want to talk about today comes from 1958, Bonjour Tristesse, and stars Gene Seberg, David Niven, Deborah Carr. And I have no physical release to show you because this is currently in Region A unavailable. It was released by Twilight Time many years ago, long since gone out of print. Yeah, I think it is available in Region B. I think Indicator might have this. There's lots of Otto Preminger movies that were released by Twilight Time that no longer have any physical release in the U.S. Now, Bonjour Tristesse was based on a novel by Françoise Sagan, who was very young when she published this, her first novel. It was an international success. Preminger bought the rights up for his new star, Gene Seberg. He had cast Seberg in St. Joan a year or two before. It was a critical disaster for the movie and for Gene Seberg in particular, at least in the U.S. But this was Bonjour Tristesse is a film and a role for Gene Seberg, much more suited to her acting abilities and her screen persona in general. And it's set on the French Riviera in a beautiful chalet overlooking the sea and the ocean. And Gene Seberg plays a teenager named Cecile. She's there with her father, Raymond. She calls her father by his first name. Cecile's mother had died a few years ago. They're living a life of pleasure, purely pleasure. Cecile and Raymond have a very intimate type relationship. There's no intimation of incest, but it's unusual. But Cecile is not jealous of Raymond's playboy ways. There's always a new girl, and Elsa is the new girl that's on vacation with them. But into this life comes Anne, and this was Cecile's mother's best friend. And Raymond had forgotten that he had even invited her, but she's much more prim and proper, and she threatens this life of pleasure, especially as Cecile sees it. And although she's not jealous, doesn't seem to be, that Raymond is becoming very fond and very serious about Anne, as he is not about his other girlfriends. She doesn't want this to happen because she's going to interfere with this life of pleasure. Now, Raymond is very rich, wealthy, and Cecile is living in this kind of atmosphere of great privilege. So these shots in the Riviera are shot in color. Georges Perrenal, beautiful cinematography, just sun-drenched and just gorgeous to look at. But they're alternating with black and white sequences. In fact, the film opens in black and white in a Paris nightclub, and we see Cecile dancing and looking over the shoulder of her partner and looking straight into the camera as she begins her confession of what she did on this summer vacation. This is intimated to be about a year later. And Seberg had been spotted by Preminger in a big search for new talent. She was living in Iowa, still a teenager. And this role is just absolutely made for her, and she had me hooked. From the moment she looks over the shoulder of her partner while she's dancing to the final shot of her looking in a mirror, looking at herself in the mirror, applying cream to her face. And it's a journey from pleasure to pain, to be sure. These transitions between the black and white and color are just expertly done by Preminger and his editor. All the performances are excellent. Deborah Carr intimates very early in her first scene that she's very much on edge. She seems to be as if she's on the verge of a nervous breakdown, but then she begins to enjoy the pleasurable life. But once Raymond becomes interested in her, she begins to feel like that Cecile needs a mother, She certainly needs a parental hand of some sort. But in a way, you wonder why, because this pleasure is such an appealing way of life. Um, so Seberg gets a great role here, um, and and it so impressed Jean-Luc Godard that he once said, and that he he cast her in Breathless, probably her most famous role, and she. She was also in Claude Chabrol's Line of Demarcation. I think that's the only other French New Wave film she was in. She impressed Francois Truffaut. The film was fifth on the Cahiers du Cinema top 10 movies in 1958, which was topped, I think, by Touch of Evil. Um, the rest of her career, Seberg's career, was kind of spotty. She didn't have a happy personal life, married several times. She dies at age 40 of overdose. But she is memorable in another film, Robert Rossen's Lilith, with Warren Beatty, which came, I think, maybe in 1966, something like that. Um, and she's just used here her awkwardness as an actress. I think fits so well into the part that she's playing. She's just her face, her body type, her hairstyle. There's something magical, almost even mythical, about Cecile in Bonjour Tristesse. But in the U.S., she did not get good reviews. She got almost as bad reviews as she got in St. John's. So even though the international audience, especially in France, embraced Bonjour Tristesse, it was not a hit here in the U.S. And that's a shame, because this is some of Otto Preminger. It's just, to me, it's just one of the great teenage performances I've ever seen. I think she's just magnificent, and Preminger uses that face to great effect in so many scenes. And Preminger was great at nightclub scenes, at dance scenes, and we get a lot of that here. And there's a really glorious dance scene where the trio actually it's a quartet. Elsa, Ramon's girlfriend, who is staying at the chalet as well, they all go to the nearest town, and there's this great dance scene. It's just absolutely bravura filmmaking by Mr. Preminger, and the film, I think, really captures the pathos of life. Behind every beautiful thing, there's some kind of pain, as Bob Dylan said. The bittersweet, the teenage lives. How do you survive? How do you survive a tragedy of which you have been the impetus about when you're only 18 years old? I think the film catches all that. Of course, Preminger was a controversial filmmaker. Your response to Bonjour Tristesse is always going to be dependent on how you react to Jean Seberg. Preminger is an observer of characters, observer of situations. He stages films great. He has great long takes. He has great camera movements, which leads to what his fans call his objectivity. He had been trained. He actually graduated with a law degree. His father was a great jurist back in Vienna. He was a theater director before he went into the movies. You see a lot of both of that. There's the objectivity that he just doesn't judge his characters. But some people see this as indifference, that Preminger is just filming a script. The script is by Arthur Lawrence, and it's a good one. He also wrote in the 50s, amongst other films, Summertime. So there's a great script. There's a great music score by George Orek, and Preminger would follow Bonjour Tristesse with probably his greatest and most memorable movie, Anatomy of a Murder. And then pretty much he made films from big best-selling novels. They were bloated. They didn't work. They didn't have good scripts. The Cardinal, Exodus, Hurry Sundown, and then he really went off the rails. He was one of those directors who came out of classical Hollywood that did not have a good time. He wasn't good at relating to the world around him as it changed the production code, which he had championed. He championed the fight against the production code, but once it went away, I don't think he knew what to do with all this new freedom, as other Hollywood directors from the classical era did as well. But he probably fell off even steeper than some of his colleagues. But he did make one more really good film in the 60s, Bunny Lake is Missing. This is another one that's missing from physical release in Region A. Hopefully someday this will come back, and I think Criterion has Anatomy of Murder, but boy, there's a lot of Preminger movies there that somebody, I would think, Lorber, somebody would pick up one day. But Bonjour Tristesse, I think, I don't usually use the word very commonly, but I think it is a Preminger masterpiece. And I was inspired to do this by a channel I just discovered, another movie channel. That's actually the name of the channel, another movie channel. And he does rankings of different Hollywood directors, and I think he did one on Kurosawa, every movie from the worst to the best. And I don't do rankings, so if you like rankings, I think he has a lot of interesting content on his channel. He ranked Bonjour Tristesse 15. I would probably rank it 2 behind Anatomy of a Murder. But I'll provide a link in the description box below because it's a good channel. I think that's relatively new to YouTube. Okay, thanks for everybody who listened. I really do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.